In each of your guys' houses, there's probably somebody who is ready and prepared when they are packing. My wife would be that one. She's got the little food containers that are filled with like little bits of mutilated carrots for the kids. And she, in the winter, probably has suntan lotion in her little bag that she even is going for a walk, or in the summer, like ready for a winter storm. She is so packed and ready. I'm the kind of packer who, 5 minutes before remembers that we're leaving, throws in some underwear, and then remembers along the way all the things I forgot. So obviously, whether you're ready or not, directly applies to this scripture that we're talking about here, about the second coming. How ready, how prepared are you? And we have the Advent season starting this morning. Anybody know what, anybody really liturgical here remember what the word is for today? Hope. Bruce, I have a chocolate bar for you next week or something. So it's hope. When we think of Advent at Christmas time, we have hope. We're excited for Christmas. But when we think about Advent of the second coming, most of us, what do we feel? Maybe a bit of fear. And fear isn't a useful emotion. I think that most of your brain shuts down when you're afraid, except something called maybe the amygdala. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's your fight or flight response. And the rest of your brain is kind of paralyzed. That might be useful if you're getting chased by a bear. Anybody been chased by a bear? Helen has. Oh, Peter has too. But not very useful when it comes to the second coming, because your brain is going to shut down and you're not going to be thinking about what we need to be thinking about for this. In fact, Jesus is one of his most common commands, one of the most common commands in the Bible, I believe it comes up something like 330 times or more, is don't be afraid. So we're not supposed to be afraid, but we are supposed to be prepared. If we're going to be prepared, Jesus has given some direct instruction. So have the gospel writers. Peter was very concerned, so was Paul. We have some things that are maybe a little enigmatic, if I'm saying that right, such as the 1611 King James Version telling us to gird up the loins of our mind. Anybody know what that means, to gird up the loins? I have a little diagram here of girding up your loins. That's getting ready for a battle or running away. Basically, you're wearing a dress in Bible times. Not really convenient for battle or for running. So you got to tie that dress up and stuff. Well, we're to do that with our head, and maybe a more modern kind of way of thinking of that is, you're wearing your house coat all day and your company kind of surprises you. You're going to be a little put out. We're to be ready in our head for this coming. So how do we do that? And there are some pretty specific directions that Jesus gives from this reading and around it in parables. He tells a parable about a boss going away, or a master. How many of you guys have been put in charge of your maybe high school class when your teacher went away? Vicky was, or your boss gave you, okay, I'm going to be away. Can you run the business for a while? Has that ever happened to any of you guys? Well, there's a story here that Jesus is telling where he's leaving for quite a while, and he puts these three people in charge. And I guess when you're put in charge, you have choices, right? I mean, one of the choices is just to kick your feet up and tell everybody, "Hey guys, it's Miller time. Boss is gone. Go home early." Actually, my friend did this in northern Alberta. That's exactly what he did. He's like, "Boss is gone. Okay, go home. It's Friday. Go home early." And, you might be popular with the people at work if you do that, but the boss isn't going to be that happy. The second choice you have is you could go, light bulb here. Hey, he's gone for a while. If I get everything working really good, I might get a promotion out of this. If I can really show him how good I am at being boss, maybe he's going to notice when he comes back. Jesus tells some other things. He tells us that it's like a thief coming. Who's had their house broken into before? I've had my house broken into, and there's a common fantasy, I think, when your house is broken into, and that's that you fantasize about if only you could have been there waiting and catching the guy, and maybe sneak up. I had that over and over afterwards. In fact, my friend, who I'm going to see this afternoon, he actually did this. He had one of those computer-style camcorder things you use for Skype hooked up on his doorway, recording 24/7. That's how, I guess, paranoid he is. And it was recording his driveway, and he actually caught a guy in the morning, in the light, running out of his car, running into his, trying to rob him, running back out when he was taking a shower. And even he was kicking himself because when he showed this to the police, it was too grainy and they couldn't get the license plate number. They saw this guy run out, but they didn't actually catch him because it wasn't. So he bought a new camera, of course, and he wishes he was more ready. I think that's a common experience. We all wish, if only I was more ready for that thief. There's another picture here we have of candles that are kept burning or lamps. And that doesn't really hit home maybe in our century because we got electricity. So you just hit the light when you need electricity, right? We had some power outs, and then it reminds you how inconvenient it is to try and, honey, I think we got flashlights somewhere. Where are the candles? In the old days, you got to think their candles weren't quite our technology. Lighting them wasn't as easy as a little flick bic, So you had to have your candles burning, your lights burning. Imagine you have an expected guest at an unexpected time. Like they say they're coming, they don't know what ferry they're going to be on from the mainland. Maybe it's the 9, whatever. How are you going to be ready in our present day and age? You probably want to have your beds made for them. You want to have some food. You want to have the house cleaned up a bit. That's the kind of image we have here from Jesus. If this doesn't hit home with lamps being lit, think of it as being ready for an expected guest and an unexpected time. Could be any time. And we have a comparison with the flood, which I think we can relate to pretty nicely this month, right? It's been told by Noah to his friends. He's telling them, hey, there's a flood coming, and none of them believe him. It takes them all by surprise. Everybody is taken by surprise at the destruction. Everybody's taken by surprise that, this actually happened in the days of Noah. And that's what it's going to be like when the second coming comes. All the wackos who are like prophesying about the second coming and everybody's laughing at them, suddenly, there is a second coming. Wow, everybody's going to be terrified at that. So I told you that fear wasn't a good response to this. What is a biblical response to being ready? In a nutshell, it's being at peace. Being at peace with God and being at peace with your neighbor. As Peter points out, he says that day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then he goes on to describe it with all the blasting and everything that's going on. Then he says, since you're waiting for all those things, all that to happen, be diligent to be found by him, by God, without spot or blemish, and at peace. We're told and instructed to be at peace. And then when Jesus is telling us about how we're going to have our, a gift at the altar was what they did in those days in the synagogues. He says, if you're going to go and offer that gift to God, but your friend has something against you or your brother has something against you, first go to your friend, make it right with him. Leave that gift there, then come back and offer your gift. Don't come to God if you've got some kind of grudge against your brother, he says. Or James is a little more emphatic here, ties it into the second coming, saying that the judge, God, is at the door. He's ready to come. So he says, don't grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. We think of that parable of the king who's forgiven millions, and the one that he forgives this millions to goes and takes his brother to court for like $100 or something like that. It's a ridiculously small amount. And that's exactly what position we're in. If we're holding grudges against our neighbors, how are we to receive the gift of forgiveness from our Father? I don't know what picture boss you have in your head. You might have had a boss that was maybe kind of ill-tempered or really wanted to get things done and thought you were never accomplishing enough, or maybe he was somebody who was really cheap, maybe just somebody you didn't like because he was always yelling at you and always short with you. If that's your picture of boss, I want you to just take that out of your brain when you're talking about this parable about the boss who's left you in charge. Because the parable where we're describing the boss in this story is about God. And God isn't those things. God is not ill-tempered. He's not out to just get all this stuff done, and he's not cheap. So when we think about God, we've got to look at what kind of leadership he exercised when he was on earth. He washed some stinky fishermen's feet and said, this is what leadership is. Leadership is being a servant to all. So in that frame of mind, with that kind of boss, this one washing the feet is the King of Kings, the creator of the Horsehead Nebula, the creator of galaxies we can't even count. That's that same God that we've got who is washing feet and is showing us good character, kindness, patience. Not that ill-tempered boss. That's the kind of boss we're serving. I think sometimes when it comes down to the end times, we think about God's return, we get so scared we turn off our whole brains, at least I do. And I start dividing up God. It's like I take this razor and I try and cut God in half between his love and his wrath. But truly, those things are connected. See, you say wrath these days in the media, it's not politically correct at all. You immediately think of like Islamic terrorists preaching the wrath of God. But wrath is found in the Bible quite a bit. And when we see it in the Bible there, it's connected very much with love. Love and wrath are inseparable. If you're married, you know that, because your wife will have some wrath at all the bad things you do to her. And she says them most of the time out of love. She cares about you. But if you really understand your children, you'll understand that if somebody was to abuse your daughter out of love, there would be wrath in the response. You would not let that go. You wouldn't just say, oh, that's fine. I love everybody. I love the guy abusing that daughter. Love calls for action. It calls for justice and a movement against inequality. And God does not sit on his hands. God is a God who is full of love and wrath against injustice. That is part of love. We can't divide God in half and say, oh, that's the Old Testament God that was like that. The New Testament God is really nice. He's a big hippie. Our media would like us to believe that Jesus was just a hippie. And definitely he did show compassion and love and completed our picture of God, which sometimes we default to that mean boss. So he completed our picture of that God as the God who was like a prodigal father. So when you're coming home smelling like the pig manure that you've been working in, he still just runs out to meet you and grabs you in his arms and says, here, be put in some new clothes. I've got rings to put on your finger. I've got so much love for you. I want to receive you in. My son was gone. I'm so glad to see you again. That completes the picture of this boss. Yes, he gets mad against slavery, and I've been told there's more slavery in the world now than ever, with over 30 million people in slavery. He gets mad against injustice, and he wants to change that. That wrath is just, it's good, it's loving. But in the same heart of God, we see compassion. And some people are unable to accept that within his compassion and goodness, he would also say enough is enough. They say, oh, a time when God is going to come back and he's going to wipe out all evil? Well, that doesn't sound like the nice hippie Jesus I kind of picture. How could a God who's loving say enough is enough? Or how could he turn down all those people who rejected and rebelled against him? Doesn't he love them? Well, yes, he does, and he wants to receive them like the Father. He wants to accept them. He's invited them to a feast. But when those people who are invited to the feast are too snobby and too busy and too preoccupied to accept his invitation, the feast comes and goes, and they miss it. And there is a final hour. We don't like that, but there is a final hour, a time when it will be too late. I'm going to jump back to Peter. He says, be at peace with God. Be at peace with him. I don't know what your brain paralyzed thinks about when you read, I've got to be without spot and without blemish and at peace. Do you start doing this? Oh, I've got to polish myself up. I've got to get rid of all my sin. I've got to make myself look good to God. I better get busy. God is coming. I better get about his work. I better earn my approval to God. If that's the kind of fear-flight response you have to the second coming, I'm going to tell you it's wrong. Because there's absolutely nothing that you can do to make yourself at peace with God. Zero. You can't do a rain dance. You can't go out and start a charity dinner. You can't just flex your moral muscles and be really good for a week and not swear. You can't do anything that would make God love you more. Zero. Nothing you do can make God love you more or can make you acceptable to God. The only thing was the cross. And he's already done that. He's already given his cross, his blood, that washes away our sin as a way for you to be made right with God. And he's just asking you, accept this. That is how to be at peace and without spot and without blemish. And that's the action we need to take to be at peace. We need to receive that. If we just go on saying, oh, someday when I'm old, well, he may return before that, or you may die before you think of that, and you may miss the feast. You may miss all the good things he has because you just keep putting it off and saying, I'm too snobby or busy. I'm too good for all that uncool stuff about God. There was lots of people who didn't show up for the banquet, so he just fills the tables with people from the streets in that parable. If your image of God is this one, that because we're sinners, because we're just such sinners, God's just this dad who's always kind of ticked off at us kids. And he's always just annoyed at us, like we're brats, we're always sitting. He's just always kind of edgy and annoyed with us. That is an incorrect picture of God in the Bible. God gave us Eden, and our whole purpose was to love each other and him and to serve him like priests in Eden. And right from the beginning in Eden, we rebelled against our very purpose. And we turned against God. And it's not just them. Each one of you, each one of my family, over and over again rebels and said, I don't need you, God. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. But through his cross, Jesus wants to be with us. He doesn't want to be angry with us. He wants to be with us. So he's made a way to be with us. It's a little bit like my daughter. She's going to help me get some wood in, okay? And I want her to come to the woodshed with me to do some wood, to work with me. I don't really care how many logs she carries. If she carries like one log, I'll be really excited. She's 4, by the way. So if she can carry one log, I'll be so happy. Even if she doesn't carry any logs and she just comes out for the trip, I'm really glad that she's experiencing that relationship with me. She's learning to work. She's learning to be with me. I get excited not about how much she accomplishes, but that we're doing it together. And this is how God is with us. He isn't helpless. Sometimes we think God is just dying for people to help him, as if he can't do anything. This is the creator God. He has no needs. He doesn't need you. He doesn't require anything of you. He only asks you and invites you to be a part of his work. And it's a little bit like a mouse and an elephant. You're not going to accomplish that much. Only through prayer, only through allowing his power to work through you, are you going to get anything done. But in doing that, there's a chance to be with him, a chance to experience the joy of a relationship, of doing work with him. And when we do the things that we're good at, we're all good at something. You all have some kind of hobby or gift that shines once in a while. It awakens you up again. You live again. You feel like, oh man, this volleyball was really good tonight, and I just pounded that spike and it really resonated. Or this drawing I was doing, oh, I'm really proud of that. And there's a part of you that comes to life when your gifts are used, and he knows that. He's a creator too. You're in his image. He wants you to create with him, to help in this world, to bring together with him an end to the injustices, together with him to work with them. It's a Romans 12 worship of our lives. In Corinthians, letter to the Corinthians, Paul says, do you not know that the Lord's people will judge the world? And if you're to judge the world, are you not competent to judge trivial cases? Do you not know that we will judge angels? How much more the things of this life? He's talking about these people who are squabbling and having court cases. They're not being at peace with one another. But did you catch that? We're going to be judges. There's going to be responsibility. This isn't sitting on lawn chairs and sipping drinks up in heaven or eating Philadelphia cream cheese. This isn't some retirement vacation. This is a chance to do some things. There's going to be something to do in heaven. In Revelation, we have a little snapshot. I told you that only the blood of Jesus washes us clean. And we talk about this lamb in Revelation that's worthy to take the scroll, to open the seals. For you were slain, we're talking of Jesus, and have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe, tongue, and people and nation, and have made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. Do you see that? We're going to reign. There's going to be something for us to do. We're not just sitting there in lawn chairs. We're going to be doing something. There's responsibility here. As we look at the end of the parable in Luke, this parable about the boss going away for quite some time and then what the people did, who was chastised at the end of that parable? It was the guy who out of fear of God, out of fear of his character, said, oh, don't trust that bad boss. If we mess up with his money, he's going to be really annoyed. So we better not mess up. We better not even take any chances. Let's just hide it under a pillow, that little bit of money he gave us, and pray he comes back soon and not do anything. He gets mad at that one because they didn't take any opportunities. They didn't do anything. They were too scared of him to move at all. He praises the one who takes the chances, who looks for the opportunities, who's not afraid to fail, who's not afraid of their own incompetence, who's not afraid of anything, and goes for it. And he praises them and he says, hey, you be in charge of 10 cities. You be in charge of 5 cities. So when he comes to restore things, there's going to be responsibility given. He says, truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me, and he's talking to his disciples here, will all sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. We're talking about uneducated fishermen are going to be the judges sitting on the 12 thrones. He says everyone who's left houses, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, wife, children, or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. So there's going to be a great turning of the tables here. All these successful people in this life are going to be kind of surprised that maybe they missed out on the poor. They missed out on the point. And these humble fishermen, these uneducated fishermen, are going to be ruling. It's going to be a great turning of the tables. We are promised in commercial after commercial after commercial the happiness of an early retirement, the happiness of a vacation in the Bahamas or in somewhere warm where we can just relax. And after some hard work, that feels good. But that is not heaven, because it would be boring. Just sitting around and sipping drinks for eternity is really boring, especially when you take into mind that we're going to have new bodies without any aches and pains. We're going to have a new motivation, not polluted by sin. And we're going to have endless energy to not sit around and sip drinks, but to do the work of God in a way that is so energizing and exciting and pure and wonderful. It'll be a creative endeavor. Right now, we can practice for that. We can be a part of that. When we pray, when we open up our hearts and compassion to our friends and think about the ways that we can be a part of that happening now. Because his kingdom is coming. It's already coming. It's already been brought and initiated by Jesus. We don't have to wait. And in the meantime, all these things that we're enduring, we can consider joy. The aches and pains of work here, we can count that suffering for doing his work here as joy, because it's little bit like working out. It's a little bit like you're building up perseverance. You're building up your trust in God. You're building up your responsibility. We can consider it all joy, James says. Now, when we think of Christ coming, rather than responding in fear, let's instead respond with what Isaac Watts wrote about it. He wrote that most famous Christmas carol about the second coming of Christ. He said, "Joy to the world. The Lord is coming. He's going to put everything right." That was written not for Christmas, not for this Advent, but for the second Advent. That can be our response. We can rejoice insofar as we share Christ's sufferings. As we're really working hard and it's not making us necessarily happy and comfortable here, we can rejoice that we're being a part of his work here. So that when he does return, when the boss surprisingly just pops in, we can be glad that he's going to complete that work. We're not to be afraid. We're not to just sit here and say, "Oh no, God is coming back." We don't want to face this day like the rest of the world will in mourning. Instead, let's face it like a golden retriever ready to have his master home. The master's coming. The good master's coming back. It's going to be okay. He's going to put an end to all the bad stuff. He's coming home, and I can't wait. That should be our response. So when he just hears that little knock on the door, he's already there waiting and ready. That should be us, waiting for him and ready for him to complete this work. If you find yourself anxious this morning at his return and thinking, "I don't know if I'm at right with God. I don't know if I'm at right with other people," you can go to those people. You can come to God and receive his free gift of salvation. And we're instructed by Paul in Philippians that the Lord is at hand. He's coming. And his instructions, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. So let's take that to God in prayer. Let's not be in fear, but let's be joyful. Let's be excited about him coming back to put things right, to put things how they should be, to fix the world, to bring about his kingdom with all of his joy. That's going to be a glad moment. So I thought an appropriate way to end would be to do exactly what I'm talking about, to sing Joy to the World. So let's stand and do that. Let's sing Joy to the World, and let's sing it for his advent.